Here we're with David Clark, live in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Welcome, David.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Been a blast so far.
That's great, man. And this afternoon, heading out to Dorado Beach. Excited to go out there.
Yeah.
So, David, you just sold the family business, Clark's Termite Pest Control in South Carolina, after how many years were you at the helm?
You know, there was never a day that Dad really said, okay, you're at the helm. You know, I was trying to be a full-time student, and he finally told me I couldn't do that anymore, so I had to try to finish, but I did get finished. And so a couple of years after I graduated in 89, so around 91.
Okay. So when you came in, that was a business doing roughly $250,000 a year.
That's it. It was doing $250,000 a year, and Dad looked at me and said that was his money, and if I wanted to make more, I had to grow the business, and so we could make more.
Okay. And so from that point in time till you sold the business at the end of 2021, I mean, you took it from $250,000 to over $20 million in revenue. So that's what we want to talk about today.
Okay.
You come on board. What the heck did you do?
Well, really, at that point, it was just working. You know, I was trying to get all the work done, try to get the revenue in, try to hire people, you know, good people, which is always a challenge, getting the right people in the right seat of the bus. Mm-hmm. You know, everybody says that, but it is true. Yeah. It's true, and finding the right people. Had a nephew that he was going to college. He was actually my first college hire. He'd been working for us over the summers. And, mm-hmm. You know, one of my goals was, hey, I want to hire a college graduate. You know, I had never hired a college graduate. And he knew the business. He fit in well because he had, you know, mm-hmm. worked in it during summers and stuff when he went to school. So hired him, which ended up being a good hire. My other goal was to hire my best friend. He was an IT guy. He did actuaries for insurance companies, mm-hmm. which, you know, basically exterminating company is an insurance company, in my opinion. All we're doing is insuring against termites. Mm-hmm. They call it a bond, but it's really insurance. But we don't want to be regulated by the insurance industry.
Yep. Right. So was this Tommy?
Yeah, it was Tommy.
It was Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, David, you guys focused very heavily on the builder space in South Carolina. Why? Well,
it was actually Dad's idea. Everybody told him he was crazy for doing that and spending that kind of money, you know, dealing with the builders. But as I looked at it, it was, you know, you want to build the renewal business. That's what you want to do, or mm-hmm. that's what I wanted to do, just build the renewal business. Really wasn't worried about pest control as much as I was building the renewal business termite side, which was kind of the opposite of what most people do in the exterminating business because of the liability. But with Tommy and the actuary part of it, the loss part, mm-hmm. We just started watching those numbers and, you know, then started really focusing in on how can we pick up as many of those termite renewals when we do the pretreats. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what we focused on for about 10 years, is doing all that and getting the processes right. Because it goes back to a process too. You know, you think of McDonald's. Why do people eat at McDonald's? Well, they know they're going to get the same food no matter where they're at. It's mm-hmm. the process, mm-hmm. you know, and so that's what we did for 10 years, is develop process, which it's constantly evolving because you're getting better ideas. You know, new products come along. There was one point in time where we almost got out of the pretreat market from when everything went from liquids to the borate.
Yep.
Dad said, nah, let's not stay in that. We're not going to do that. And actually, Brandon was working for me at that point, and I said, Brandon, take this and go out there and let's do one and see what the process will be like. Mm-hmm. And of course, they wanted you to go out there with a 5-gallon bucket and a drill and mix it up. And, you know, as many pre-treats as we were doing, that wasn't going to work because mm-hmm. you just couldn't be out there with a 5-gallon. You couldn't get enough of them done. So I came up and built a pre-mix tank to pre-mix it all in so the guys could load the chemical before they left, and then they could go out and spray it and then unload it when they came back in, clean out their tanks, because that stuff's real sticky, syrupy. So Dad said, don't do it, and I stuck with it. I just thought the plan was good, the model was good. That's just what I thought. I guess it ended up working out.
Well, I mean, you always talked about, as you grew that business, trying to allocate your advertising dollars, right?
Right.
You used to say, I can advertise here or there, or I can dump those advertising dollars in building relationships with the builders and doing these pre-treats. Why did you focus on the builder relationships in the Carolinas?
Dad had kind of started that way, and I saw that it was working. Then, everybody, what are you supposed to spend 2-3% of your annual revenues on advertising? Started looking at those dollars and dang, should I do that? And then what any kind of method, it was just like, I'll just spend those dollars on these builders and pick as many up as I can. We got some good local builders who ended up being regional builders, which really helped us a lot. It was difficult going to those other markets when you don't have the money. You kind of run them from Columbia until you get enough work, and it just, it's actually how most people start their exterminating business, out of their house.
Yeah.
My son went down and started our Beaufort, Bluffton, Hilton Head, Savannah branch. And that's exactly how he started it, right out of his apartment, just him. And right before we sold, I think he'd done it in like 8 years it took him to get to where he had 3 technicians and just hired a girl in the office. So it takes time. You got to be able to invest in that.
So we get to 2021, you've got a business that's extremely recurring, right? You've got all this recurring revenue, but you're doing a lot of this with your builder relationships. And when I look across the US, I see a lot of companies that do pre-treats. When I talked to Mike Rogers, who's a buddy of yours, way back in the day when he started Killingsworth in North Carolina, he said, I woke up one day and I was doing $5 million a year in pre-treats, but I had no recurring revenue because I wasn't selling any renewals on that. So I hear you talk a lot about a similar thing that Mike talks about, which is you do the pre-treat through the relationship with the builder. Now you own that house. I'm a customer now. I'm in the house.
Right.
What happens?
So really, the paperwork.
Yep.
I had a builder tell me one time, actually a good friend, he said, Dave, you don't sell me service, you sell me paperwork. I just need the paperwork. Don't care what goes from there. Some do, some don't care about what happens once they get the house built. A lot of them care about how much the renewal is, how much you charge for pest control, what does it cover. Some of them do and some of them don't. It just depends on the builder. But really, we put our focus on our paperwork, making it simple. I mean, you want to make it simple to do business with you. So what I tried to do, and with all the guys' help, we came up with the paperwork so it made it easy for the customer to choose. When you got your paperwork, you look at it and it's pretty straightforward. I'll check this box, I'll check that one, send it in, it's done. We were pretty successful with that, but we weren't successful enough. We were at a point to where we'd started messing with that a little bit more. We did it for 10 years, then we started focusing on growing and let the paperwork kind of keep doing what it was doing. I think we were getting probably 50, 55%, 45%. We made the paperwork a little bit better. We got up to about 65%.
What were these services?
Termite and pest control.
Okay.
And we started kind of focusing on the pest control side. Well, hey, we got all these termite renewals. We should have more pest control than what we have. So we started kind of changing gears and trying to pick up on the pest control side of it. We started gaining about 35% just in paperwork. Not anybody selling, not anybody, just through the paperwork. And that helped a lot. But I was right in the middle of, we were fixing to revamp the sales program because now you have mosquito control. So you had to change your paperwork to say that you can pick up mosquito control, you can pick up fire ant control. We tried to put everything in there, but then we'd start looking at, that's too complicated. let's just keep it simple. Let's just give them 3 things: termite, pest control, and mosquito control, and combine them together and bundle. And you get a cheaper price for bundling. You get a cheaper price for paying up front. You get a cheaper price paying a year in advance. And it's just all in the paperwork. It wasn't anybody calling them, telling them that.
When you talk about this paperwork, this isn't the closing documents. I go out and buy my house.
Yes.
I get a bundle of paperwork, and oh, look, your house has been pre-treated by Clark's Termite and Pest Control.
Correct.
To continue the service, you can have pest control. We'll sell you termite services. And
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so that's what it is. And you just get the paperwork. It's all in your closing package. And we found that we were picking up about 65% just off the paperwork. So our next focus was going to be that 35%. We actually started working on it about 2 years ago, is coming up with that 9-touch process is what I called it. Touches, so your paperwork would be the first touch. Second touch would be maybe a postcard. Hey, we haven't got your paperwork from you. Really need to fill it out and send it back to us so we don't have it still in the builder's name. We need it in your name. Because they don't have to pay anything.
Yep.
Because you have to guarantee it for a year anyway from the time the builder and the time they move in. And that was another challenge, is coming over, because now that's not the problem because houses sell so quick. But back a long time ago, a builder might have a spec house sitting for a year.
Yeah.
And now we got to do a renewal on it because it's been a year. Of course, the builder doesn't want to pay for that. I don't want to pay for a renewal. More of those advertising dollars go into, okay, you ain't got to pay a renewal on it, but we're going to come do an inspection, charge them $35, just something to help cover our costs for being there. So we have the opportunity to pick up that customer, the homeowner, once they buy it. And not everybody's going to buy it. Our discussions were on, well, when do we give up? When do we say, hey, we're not going to sell to them? How long are we going to keep sending them stuff and sending somebody out there? When do we cut our losses?
Yep.
So that's all the stuff that we were coming up with, but I sold it, so it's not my problem now.
How instrumental were these builder relationships doing these pre-treats and then selling these services to the new homeowner? How instrumental was that whole process in growing Clark's?
Oh, it was 90% of it, or I could even say 100%. It was very instrumental in us getting there and getting there quick, because the housing market just blew up. Well, especially in the last 5 years, it's really blown up. You also have the downfall of, if the housing market falls apart, then all of a sudden everything slows down. In, 2007, 2008, we had the housing crash.
Yeah, what happened then?
We kept growing.
How?
It was, the residual from all the houses that we were doing, because you're a year behind. So all the houses that were built before, we were coming up. It did slow down, and not to say, but we did keep growing. It didn't really, we didn't see it in our growth that it affected us that much. It really gave us time to take a breath, I think. It was kind of like, whoo, man, we've just been hammering this thing for 10 years and we needed a break. And we kind of refocused. That's when we said, okay, if this happens again, we've got to have other services to take the place of this revenue. So we added wildlife services. We started going
Moisture control.
Moisture control, which we'd always done that. I think that's just part of being a full service termite company or pest control company. I just think that's all part of it. You're a homeowner, you trust us already, so why not do those things? With our construction side, we used to just sub it out or tell people, hey, here's 3 names, call them, don't call us. We don't do that. Inevitably, they would mess up, and guess who they would call? They'd call us. This guy really messed us up. Well, it's not us. So Dad just said, well, if I'm going to take the phone calls, we're just going to do it. So that's how we kind of got into all of those other things, which really, help also with your relationship with the builder, because builder builds a house, customer finds out they got water under it, or, whatever. We can do that for the builder. So us doing a free pre-treat might be okay, but Over here on this other side, we're doing all their drain work, we're doing all this stuff. So we're actually collecting more revenue. Then they've got all their offices and
Yep.
all that stuff. They got to have pest control at those. They've got to have,
Yep.
other services at those. So you end up selling the builder on those other things. Yeah, I might be doing a free pre-treat, but I'm not doing the pest control for free. I'll probably give him a good deal on it. But then you're seen in the neighborhoods, your trucks
Yep.
are seen, you're doing the work for the builder. They bought the house from the builder. It's a great relationship, and it's something that you have to protect, I think.
All of these pre-treats, as these builders are building out subdivisions, it's free to the builder. You guys would come out and pre-treat it. How much would it cost you on average to pre-treat a home?
If you go from liquids to baits to borates, it just depends on which product you're using. And we started out with liquids. If you'd have told me 10 years ago that I'd be a bait guy, I'd have looked at you and said, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Ain't no way I'll ever do baits. But we are a bait company now. It's less invasive. People like it better. It's green. It's not all about what you want a lot of the times or what you feel is the best thing. It's really what the consumer sees as the best thing. Had a guy that had a used car lot, and he said, I'm buying all these cars, and it was stuff like I drove.
Yeah.
He said, and I couldn't sell it. And then one day I just said, well, I'm going to buy these two pieces of junk, is really what he called them. Put them out there, they sold quick. He said, and I learned a valuable lesson there that it's not what I want, it's what they need,
Yeah.
and what the consumer wants.
Right.
Everybody likes this green stuff, just like with citrus pesticides, they don't want you putting chemicals in their house. And you got to look at those things, consumers are busy now, with their kids and baseball and traveling and all that. They won't have to meet the pest control guy. So how do you formulate things to fit into that realm and also to separate you from everybody else?
So when you would put bait stations in from a pre-treat perspective, what happens if I come in, I buy the house from the builder, I'm in there, I don't renew the services, would you guys physically come out to remove the bait stations?
We did at first.
Okay.
We'd take the whole station out while we were leaving holes in the yard. So then we were having to take dirt around. I said, this is ridiculous.
Yep.
What we evolved to over the learning process of, we're taking dirt with us and filling the
Yep.
holes back up. I actually had one guy tell me that he ended up getting sued by a homeowner because he took a bait station out and the homeowner put a ladder on it and it fell over and he got hurt. And so he ended up getting sued over it. I was like, well, I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
So what we started doing is just taking the bait out and leaving the actual unit in the ground. And then that makes it, if they get termites one day, hopefully they'll call you back.
Yep.
Because you did a good job of, trying to tell them they needed the service and all of that. And if they did get termites, they'd call you back. The bait station's there. All you got to do is go put the baits back in it. Now you might have a hard time finding them, but usually you graph it out. And that's the hard part that people don't say, oh, you just do free pre-treats, it's easy. But what about the process? Going out and getting it done, covering up the holes, or you're going to take them out, or you're going to leave them in, all those processes. And it's a learning process, because you start doing it and then you're like, oh, that ain't working too good. Let's change a little bit.
What about relationships with just realtors?
We did play a lot in that space because you have to do termite letters. That's what realtors refer to it as, but it's really CL100's the technical name. In South Carolina, everybody has their own. Georgia has their own. South Carolina has their own. North Carolina has their own. I think those are really the only states I knew about because it's really kind of the only states I operated in. Some of the states use a national form, and then you'll find out a mortgage company will be in New Hampshire.
Right.
And they'll be doing the closing on it, and they want that national form. Well, we can't use that national form. We have to use the form that the state of South Carolina says we have to use. Getting those people to understand all that, you have to get on the phone with them and say, hey, we can't use that form because they got a paralegal that's just going through a checklist.
Yep.
I got to have this form, and that's what I got to have. No, this form takes place of that form, and you have to explain that. But, little things like that. But, the real estate market is very important. It's just the housing market in general, everything to do with it. selling, buying, all that stuff.
So with regard to real estate agents on like aftermarket deals, we're doing termite letters. So if I understand correctly, in the Southeast, I go out, I'm selling a house. Before the deal can close, there's got to be a termite letter that is an inspection, right?
That's
you do an
correct.
inspection, you fill out a document that says, hey, no termite issues.
That's what people think, no termite issues, but it's a lot more than that. You know, are there any beetles in the house, termites, is there any moisture problems? Now, not every state's that way. South Carolina is. So you got to look for water, you got to look for all that stuff. Hence, being in all the other services, you find the termites, you find the damage, you find the water under it. It ends up being a one-stop shop for that real estate agent, because if you're a real estate agent, you want to go to the next sale. You don't want to have to meet 5 or 10 people over there to get that one house sold. Oh, I've got to go meet the drain guy. Now I got to go meet the construction guy. And you got 3 or 4 different estimates coming from 3 or 4 different people, and you're having to chase all that stuff down. Makes it easy to do business with us.
So you basically built the business around solving the issues that a real estate agent would have in selling the house.
Correct.
We can take care of all of these different issues. Do you do termite letters for free? Do you charge for them?
No, we charge for them. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Don't charge enough, but a home inspector, I think they get $250. We get $75. That number should be higher for us. But, you know, the market kind of dictates what you charge.
A typical home inspector in South Carolina, for example, can go out and do the same CL 100 termite letter. Is that correct?
No,
No, they
the home
can't.
inspector can't do it unless he has his license.
Okay.
Now, if he's got his license, 7A license is what you have to have in South Carolina. If he has that license, he can. Most of them don't.
Okay.
Most of them just say, hey, you need to see the termite guy about all that.
When you guys are building that business over the years, are you building relationships with both realtors and home inspectors? Or just do you focus more on the real estate agents?
Mostly on the real estate agents. And that's the way the Columbia market was.
Okay.
As we started going to other markets, Charleston market, the real estate agent usually handles, you know, telling the customer who they need to get. As we went to the Beaufort market, I think with Jamie, he called me one day and said, real estate agents don't pick the who does the termite letters. The closing attorney's telling them.
Okay.
So we found in that market it was 2 different people. Sometimes it was real estate agent, sometimes it was the closing attorney. Now in that market, you've got to go to the closing attorney and to the real estate agent.
So how do you build relationships with these service providers, the attorneys, the real estate agents? I mean, what's the trick there?
The associations. You got your Home Builders Association. They're called different things. We actually changed the name of the one in Columbia a year after I was president of that association, changed it to the Building Industries Association because we thought home building was narrowing our focus on just home builders. And we wanted to bring the commercial guys, the renovation guys, we wanted all of them to be part of the association. So that's why they changed the name of that. The attorneys have an association or a thing that they go do, and you've got to be involved so you can make the contacts. And that's what we did with our managers. You know, Brandon, my nephew, who came to work for us, we pick on him and call him our entertainment director because he did all that stuff, which is very important. People think that, oh, well, that's a cushy thing to do. No, it's not a cushy thing to do. You're out at night entertaining people, taking people to dinner, going to association meetings, getting involved on their boards. All of a sudden, you're caught up on all these boards and doing all these things. But it's in the community, so it helps build the brand of your company.
I see. You put your entertainment director. He goes out to all of these different functions and associations. You know, I know in real estate, you've got RESPA and all sorts of acts that restrict kickbacks or referral fees, but is it really just come down to being the guy that's in front of these folks, gets service done quickly, gets it done right? And
Exactly.
Okay.
You hit the nail on the head. That's what it is. When they got a problem, they got one person to call and it gets straightened out for them. They don't want to call a number and, oh, I got to switch you to this guy or that guy, No, I want to be able to call the man and make it happen. We all kind of have our phone numbers out there to those people so they can call you, and if they got a problem, you get it straightened out for them.
Mm-hmm. David, when you sold that business, I mean, you were one of the largest pest control companies in the United States. You built that through the team you had, the relationships you had with the builders and the real estate agents. What are some other things, as you look back over your long career, maybe some mistakes that you made, maybe some things that you really did well that maybe you didn't expect?
Right. My whole goal was to get out of the exterminating business, but it didn't work out that way for me. Which I thought was kind of funny.
It turned out to be great for you.
That's right. That's a hard one. I have to think, because I made so many of them. I mean, you're gonna make mistakes, but let's make a decision and go with it. We can always punt. Yep. I mean, you can always, that ain't working. Let's move and go in this direction instead. That's really being agile, being able to change and change quick. I think says a lot, because a lot of the bigger companies don't do that. It just grinds along very slow, and to be able to make a change and make it happen in a couple of months really makes a difference, I think. A lot of people say, oh, you need to plan more. Dad was funny. I kept telling him I wanted to get in the lawn treatment business, not the landscape business, but I wanted to get in the lawn treatment because I thought it fit very well, because what do? We send a guy out in the truck and he puts out chemicals.
Yep.
What does a lawn treatment guy do? He gets in a truck and he goes out and he puts out chemical. Well, we're pretty good at that. Yep. So we should be able to do pretty good at that. It was actually when Top Choice came out. I guess it was Bayer that had it. I can't remember who had the product, but it's fipronil. They were introducing Top Choice, so I was down in Orlando, Tampa, the thing, the kickoff. So I'm sitting there and I'm in the meeting and my phone rings and it's Dad, and I'm like, he knows I'm down here. I'll call him when I get out of the meeting. Well, about 5-10 minutes later, it's ringing. It's Dad. Well, I guess I need to get it. Let me walk out and see what's going on. I walk outside. He says, well, we're in the landscape business now. I've gone in partners with this guy. Dad, we're not ready. We ain't got any plan. Oh, you plan too much. Sometimes you just got to go at it and do it. Mm-hmm. That was just Dad's attitude. It's just, hey, you make a decision, go at it, figure it out as you go. And I wanted to plan a little bit more than what he did. We just got to do it. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And we'll figure it out as we go. I kind of wanted to have a plan in place. Yeah. That isn't how anything ever worked for us. We never had a plan in place because we never had it. I mean, honestly, we didn't have any money. We were scraping by. It was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough, yeah.
I remember you telling a story about how your father's got the trucks repossessed.
Yeah, Dad, I was probably 3 or 4 years old when it happened. He just told me about it later. He said, and actually my uncle and my cousin were working with us then, and they said they pulled up the red light. They told him to get out the truck, and they took the trucks. He probably had 3 trucks at that point. It wasn't very many. He said they took the trucks. Well, he found out where the trucks were. He went and cut the chains of the gate and took all the trucks back from the RS and kept working. And he never told me what happened or what they did, but he said, yeah, I had to take them back. And I said, you couldn't take them back. He said, oh, yeah, I took them back. He said, how they expect me to pay them if I don't have the trucks and I can't make the money to pay them back? I'm trying to pay them. I'm doing the best I can. We got to live too. So it was struggles like that, cutting power off, cutting phones off, not being able to cash checks for 6 weeks because you just didn't have the money. You had to make sure your people got paid before you got paid. Yeah. The struggles that people don't see. You're lucky you got this $20 million business. Well, it didn't start out as a $20 million business.
As you grew that thing, that business has 200 some odd employees now, right?
Yeah, we had 240 employees, 160 trucks. We had 3 S10s went in 2007, 2008. It was the crisis before that in the 80s.
Yep.
So we had 3 S10 trucks and one truck that was a construction truck. And I remember seeing them sitting behind the office thinking, how are we going to make the payments on these things?
Yeah.
Because it's just basically me and Dad working at that point. Maybe my dad and my cousin were working at that point. But hey, we made it through it, made the payments, kept the trucks, and when everything started rolling again, we had the truck sitting there and we could go to work.
Well, how has it been for you as you've grown this business to go from a few employees to now a couple hundred, right? I mean, the level of complexity in a business like that is dramatically high.
Good people.
Yeah.
Hiring good people, making good hires. It wasn't like, hey, I hired this guy and he was the best one ever. It takes you 3 or 4 to get to the person that you need, or at least that's what I found. You're out working, you're trying to get everything done. You don't have the time.
Yeah.
You just got to say, hey, well, these are the 3 candidates. Hey, let's take this guy and see how he does. And a lot of times we hired people just to get a warm butt in the seat because we just had so much work. We had to get it done. And that's what we'd promised people. Here recently, I was in the mold business, and we had a crew where we'd actually go clean mold from crawl spaces and all that. And, my deal is always with my builders or just customers was that I'm going to do what I'm going to say I'm going to do, and I'm going to be there, and I'm going to get it done. And I'm going to get it done right. If I don't get it done right, I'm going to go back and fix it. So I couldn't keep a crew together. I mean, it was during the COVID stuff. People were getting paid to stay home. Well, I want to go crawl under a house and clean mold off. Why do I want to do that when I can sit at home and get paid? Probably more than I would be paying somebody to go under a house and wipe mold off a wall. So I just quit doing it. I called builders and said, just can't do it anymore. I can't keep a crew together, and I can't do for you what I promised you I'd do.
Yep.
And they all understood that. They were all like, good. In fact, I got a $14,000 check to give back to a builder where he actually paid me to do stuff I never did.
What sort of advice would you give? A lot of the guys that listen to this show were like you 30 years ago. Young guys trying to grow a business. A lot of them don't have the money to do the things that they need to do. It's tough. But you got a lot of really great advice from your old man. So what sort of advice would you give to us, some of these younger guys trying to grow these businesses?
Dad told me one time, and I think he made this word up. He called it stick-to-itiveness.
Yep.
And whether he made it up or not, I don't know. I always just thought it was kind of funny. But he told me, because, hey, there was more than one time that I told him I was quitting. I've had enough of this. We don't have good equipment. We don't have this. We don't have that. I said, it's just not worth it. And he looked at me and he said, the easiest thing in the world to do is quit. Everybody can quit. Yep. Everybody can quit. That's easy, is to quit. Just quit. Everybody quits. It's easy to quit. I don't like my boss anymore. I'm quitting. I'm finding another job. When you start a business, you can't quit. If you quit, then the business goes away. But he said, you got to stick to it. You got to have stick-to-itiveness. It takes a special person to do that. And it does. It does take a special person and a special wife, to stand behind you while all that's going on.
Absolutely. You were immensely close to your father.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, still this very day you talk about him. I know you lost him 3 years ago. I lost my father around the same time. But what was it like to be able to work with him on a day-to-day basis? I mean, what did that mean to you?
Just like anything else, it was a struggle because not only is your dad, he's also your boss. It's hard to separate the two. But we did a pretty good job of separating the two. We would go on family vacations, which we didn't do very much in the beginning because just didn't have the money. But, kind of when we got to where we were making a little bit of money, and we'd try to say, we're not talking about work, but we always did. It always came up. We'd be sitting around having a drink or whatever, and work would come up and ideas would come up. I used to think it was like a punishment, but now looking back, it was a blessing.
It's one of the greatest rewards to be able to do that,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. And then to have my son work with me was a blessing. I'm sure he probably thought the same thing that, you think, Dad, you're an asshole. Why you got to be like that? I think our biggest argument was over computers. He didn't want, he was old school, everything paperwork.
I remember these stories.
Yeah. And he'd want to say, I want the IRS to see what we're doing. The IRS doesn't even know. Well, Dad, they can't come in here and raid your computer, But Dad could keep up with everything in his head. He was really smart, graduated from high school when he was 16, went to the University of Chicago, went there for 2 years, ended up joining the military, and that's how he ended up in South Carolina, is because of Fort Jackson. I say if it weren't for Fort Jackson, I wouldn't be here, because Dad would have never ended up in Columbia. So,
where's your father originally from?
Live Oak, Florida.
That's right.
So he's from Florida, went to Chicago, then to South Carolina, and that's how we ended up in South Carolina in the exterminating business.
So he probably didn't sound as funny as you do when he talked.
Oh no, he didn't. He was a little bit more articulate than I was.
I'm talking about the accent.
Oh yeah, that's right. His accent was really not as bad as mine. You know, everybody says I'm from Texas. Nope, not from Texas. But anyway, he was selling insurance. And that's how he got into the exterminating business. Met a man named Mr. Kaiser, because we owned a company called Arrow Exterminating too. So Dad had worked for Mr. Kaiser, had kind of started his. Well, Mr. Kaiser also sold tractors and all this, had a place called the Tractor Mart. He owned a bunch of property around an area that grew really quick. So Mr. Kaiser had done pretty well. And his son didn't want to do the Termite Pest Control. He actually wanted to do the tractor business.
Okay.
So Mr. Kaiser told Dad that he could run his and try to start his own at the same time. Well, he did that for a while, but then he finally bought Mr. Kaiser out. Actually, Arrow was bigger than Clark's was for a long time. He had to keep the name for a certain length of time. You know how that stuff works. So Dad bought a bunch of, he bought companies too, which I didn't find out till later, because we'd always built everything through organic growth, is what everybody calls it. But Mr. Kaiser, him and Dad were buddies, and so Mr. Kaiser financed it for him. So he just paid Mr. Kaiser for it, because he didn't have the money to go out and just pay him for it. So we ended up with that company and just grew from there. And then eventually Clark's outgrew Arrow. So I think it was only 3 or 4 years ago that we got rid of that name.
Sucked it in, yeah.
Yeah.
So why did you end up getting to the point in 2021 where you sold the business? What was behind that decision?
60 years old this year. How much longer I'm going to do it? What does it mean to the family? Am I giving them a burden or am I giving them a blessing for the business?
Yeah.
Kind of always had been an idea that maybe one day we would sell, kind of depending on what your kids do, what they decide. I have 3, 2 boys and a girl. The oldest one's very involved. Middle one's a social worker. He's not going to be involved. And the other one's only 19, so she doesn't know what she wants to do yet. She's trying to figure that out. How do you fairly distribute it? You talked about Mike Rogers earlier, talked to Mike a lot about builder markets. Mike went in a different direction than we did. He took his advertising dollars and advertised and just kind of stuck to Charlotte, which, I think in hindsight, that was a good model. That's a good business model. I mean, it's just 2 different philosophies, and they both worked. They both work. It's just you got to decide which direction am I going, and just go at it and go at it hard. That's what I'd tell anybody. Yeah. You got to go at it hard. It's not an 8 to 5 job when you own your own business. It's from sun up to sundown, and sometimes a lot after sundown, and you're gone a lot. You're at a lot of meetings. You just have to be involved in all of that stuff, and it takes time. It just takes your time to do that. Yep. And the people want to see you. They don't want to see somebody else. They want to see you.
I realize that every time I send the Mexican to a meeting in my stead.
But I think that might be the Mexican. But he's a good guy, though, man.
He's a great guy.
Everybody enjoys the Mexican.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
He's wicked smart and pure entertainment simultaneously.
That's exactly right. He's fun to be around.
If you could do it over again, would you go down the builder path just the same way you did?
I would modify it a little bit and kind of pick certain, like we had a builder that built a lot of starter homes, and once Tommy came on and I could see, we kept the information, garbage in, garbage out, the information going out is only as good as what you're putting in. So we were tightening up, you know, putting the information into the system so we could get the reports that we needed. We had this builder, they were building starter homes. Well, we saw we weren't picking up 15%
Yep.
of the work, you know, getting termite renewals. You start looking at those numbers, well, wait a minute, I'm losing money here. So in essence, we were going to fire them. We were going to tell them we didn't want to do their work anymore. You know, luckily, they pulled out of the market because they weren't doing too good in the market. They pulled out of the market, and we didn't have to do that. I hate doing that. You don't like to tell people, I'm just not going to do your work anymore, or at least I don't. You feel like you failed. You know, I don't like feeling like I failed at something, which I failed at a lot of stuff. We did stucco, which I kept telling Dad that stuff does not fit with us very well. And me and him had an argument, and he told me, we just won't do it anymore. I looked at him and said, that's what I've been waiting to hear. I walked right out the back door of the office and told the guys, we ain't doing this no more. We're just not doing it anymore. So that's.
David, you just mentioned Tommy. And I want to talk a little bit about Tommy and Andy for a second. Start with Tommy. So you guys, I think, had pictures of yourselves in pajamas together when you're like 3 or 4 years old.
That's me and Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys, obviously, lifelong friend.
Exactly. They put us in a playpen together when we were born. We lived across the street from each other. And so that was one of my goals, is to hire him, because he got his IT degree. And I knew that I had to get a handle on how much we were picking up. How could we get better about picking up the customers.
Yep.
And making that customer base. I think when Tom first started, I said, let's get the customer base up to 1,000. Well, we hit that, and then it was like, let's get it to, and I can't remember the exact number, but okay, now let's get it to 3,000. I think when I sold, we had 20,000, maybe 30,000 people in our database.
Yep.
That's really, people don't look at that, but that's really worth a lot of money, that database. You might not have the client anymore, or that house might have been sold and somebody else owns it now, but you've got a great database of information, if you put your information in good, to teach you what you need to do.
And Tommy was instrumental in building that and mining that data.
Oh yeah, and helping with the paperwork, and but there was a bunch of people down the line that really helped get us that aren't with us anymore, that really helped get us to where we're at. My uncle, my cousin, a guy named Bobby Bain that actually has his own company now that worked for us for years. In fact, when Dad told me to take over, because his wife was passing away, went to Bobby and said, you got to go to this meeting. He looked at me and said, I'm not going to do that. So that was really my first challenge. So I called Dad and said, Dad, Bobby said, of course, he'd been with us for a long time, and he's older than me.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I could tell him. Dad looked at me and said, either you can call him and tell him either he's going or he's fired, or I can call him and tell him that. I said, no, Dad, let me handle it. Let me do it. I didn't tell him that, but that's exactly what Dad would have told him.
Yep.
But I didn't tell him that. I said, no, Bobby, you really need to do this, and these are the reasons why. And he ended up doing it. Super nice guy, but he kind of watched me grow up from, I think he probably started working for us when I was probably about 8 years old. And he was part of it. My uncle was part of it, getting us to where we ended up. Actually, my cousin taught me how to do termite work. Rode with him. I remember, I think our termite renewals were $35, and we hit $1,000 in I think it was a week. I think we did $1,000 worth of renewals in a week. It's like a record. Now that's easy to achieve.
David, your business philosophy is a little bit different than a lot of folks, because you've grown up, you've worked with your father, your uncle's cousins, you've got your best friend working in the business. And then even in Georgia, Carolina, and the Carolinas, you tend to be a very, very friendly competitor. Over the years, you've talked about how you're friends with all these guys. You like all these guys. All these guys are out there toiling in the pest control vineyards. Right. They're your friends. They're your competitors. But you're not one of these guys who's trying to assassinate them. You want to see them all succeed.
That's right.
And that's been your philosophy.
Well, yeah, because it's an industry. I can't do all the work, and if you've got good competitors, you got a good market to play in. I actually learned that from home builders, being involved with the home builders and seeing how they're all competitors.
Yep.
But they all come together and talk about things that the industry needs so far as regulation and all of the things that go on in the industry. And the pest control industry is the same way. I kind of look at the pest control industry as the last family farm business, because that's really in South Carolina, most of them are family owned and operated. Yeah. Even the big Termites in South Carolina is family owned and operated. Has been for 4 generations now, I think, and I think we were going to be on our 3rd generation. So that's kind of how I see it. And, I am buddies with all those guys, and I think they're good people. Do I like all of them? No. Do we all get along all the time? No. But in the end, we are friends. You talk to them, and what are you doing? Like Mike Rogers, talk to him a lot. Craig Heath, Steve Leidinger with Home Pest Control, Buster Dallas down at the beach with Strand, the Brunsons, just all kind of people that you just talk to all the time and run stuff off of. And, what do you think of this mold stuff? Or give them a call and say, hey, what about, with COVID, how about, we got all the fogging machines. We can go in and fog and clean up. Are you going to do any of that? What do you think about that?
Yeah.
So those kind of things that you all talk about with each other, even though you are competitors.
One of the biggest joys for me in working with your team is, number one, seeing how you dealt with your team. Seeing how you took care of these people. I think you kind of followed probably in the same footsteps of how your father dealt with the people. Because, it's usually the founder that ultimately sets the culture, right? It's the decisions the founder makes. It's the way the founder behaves. People try to emulate that. So I think you probably emulated your father. You have obviously been spectacularly successful in growing this business. But I know that you had 240 some odd employees over there. It wasn't just you. Throughout this process, I got to spend a lot of time with Andy Strickland and Tommy Miles. And Tommy, we talked about a little bit ago. You guys were in the same playpen together. And of course, Andy was your CFO. And without these two guys kind of helping you build that business, specifically helping you through this M&A process, which, as you know, is a pain.
It's a bear.
It is a royal pain. But your business was probably... I can probably say, if it wasn't the most competitive process of 2021, it was neck and neck. You had a ton of different acquirers vying to buy this business. It was a very scarce and unique asset. You had built up some unique capabilities. And again, I know it's not just you, it was your entire team. What was it like working with Andy and with Tommy?
Most of that work was on them. Tommy's the one that gets all the information out of PestPac, information in. Well, the processes which we develop. It's actually Tommy, Andy, Brandon, and Brandon is the social director, but he's keeping a close eye on those real estate agents, our builders, and those relationships, keeping those good and strong. I mentioned one of the competitors there in Columbia. He started doing free pretreats. That's kind of how we got there. He told me I was doing them for free because I was giving a rebate, but they were paying me. Brandon helped do that. We had a lady that Dad had hired, had worked with us a long time. She was more of a bookkeeper than a CFO. And when it came time to hire somebody that could really take us to the next level at that, Andy was the one we ended up hiring, which was one of those hires that was like, dang, I made a good decision there. We had hired somebody before Andy, and he went to leave, and we made him look through all the candidates and get it down to like 3. And then me and Tommy looked from there and said, okay, we'll take Andy. And that's where Andy came along. But in order to put all of everything together on the financial side, you definitely have to have a strong CFO.
Yeah.
And Andy was definitely that. He was really good and really instrumental. I think you could ask Franco, because I think Franco worked with him a lot. Him and Tommy a lot.
I might not understand Franco's answer, but yes, I will ask him that. Well, listen, David, welcome to Puerto Rico. Looking forward to an exciting weekend with you and your lovely bride.
Yeah.
Thanks for stopping in the boardroom today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, and it's been a blast. I look forward to doing some more.
Indeed.